Welcome to the Superconnectors podcast. Today, we're talking to Graciëlla van Vliet, the co-founder of Closure. She will tell us the story of how one of their employees called Jochem inspired a new AI tool that they're bringing to the market. Graciela was at Superconnectors in 2023 in Rotterdam, and she had her own first Critical Ask on stage there. We're checking in today with her to see how that's been going, and let's dive into that story. So, welcome to the Critical Ask podcast, the only podcast where we give more context to the breakthrough introductions that startups are looking for. And with us today is Graciëlla van Vliet, co-founder of Closure, a B2B software solution for enterprises like telecom providers, insurance companies, that help those companies efficiently handle mutations after a key event. I'm taking this from your LinkedIn, such as, for example, a customer passing away, moving, or divorcing.
Yep.
And also more recently, from that startup, you co-founded Jochem.ai.
Yeah.
And that's a tool for large customer service teams to retrieve knowledge about a customer at the click of a button. This I kind of pieced together myself.
A great summary, nothing to add.
Improve on that. So we saw you, of course, on stage at Superconnectors in Rotterdam, where you talked about Jochem.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about, what Jochem does and where your Critical Ask at the moment has landed.
Thanks for the great intro, by the way. So 6 years ago, we started Closure, and then 2 years ago, we launched Jochem.ai based on an internal problem we had. Mm-hmm. So we are used to building products that help us work more efficiently. And it's actually named after our first colleague. So our first colleague is named Jochem. He was responsible for customer support. Mm-hmm. Was more interested in programming. So after a couple of years, he changed roles and still had a lot of knowledge in his head, actually. So he was programming, but at the same time answering a lot of questions. And that was when we thought, well, isn't there a way to basically relieve the actual Jochem from all those questions and also make sure that we capture it and are not dependent on him all the time?
Yeah.
That's when we started building this replica Jochem.ai. That is basically integrated into your internal communication tool. So that can be Slack or Microsoft Teams, where you ask questions based on your knowledge base. And if it doesn't know the answer, because that happens a lot, people are not always disciplined to put actually knowledge in the knowledge base, it escalates it to the actual person. So also a lot of information about Jochem.ai. Mm-hmm. But we started using that internally. And then after, I think within 3 months, we said, well, this is very nice. If it helps us, then probably also our customers. So we decided to turn Jochem.ai into an actual product that other companies can buy, and that's where we're now. So I want to say nutshell, but it's not a nutshell, or a very big nut.
No, that is really good. I'm also joined here today with Dina.
Hello.
Dina is also part of the Superconnectors team. I think she's also very excited to be here for the first time. On the podcast.
Nice, it's company.
Yeah, did you you heard about Closure and you heard about Closure, you heard about Jochem. Like, what are the first kind of things that came up to your mind when you heard about it?
I mean, it's cool. It's very interesting. I've heard a lot about you and like how much you took part, like you were part of the Rotterdam 2022 event.
Yeah.
And you had a
2023.
23?
Yeah, it was last year.
Yeah,
oh,
indeed.
23, sorry. Yeah, and I think you're very popular and which is why we wanted you here, because we want to kind of talk about your story with us and like outside of our event where you've arrived, I guess is the word. Like I don't know.
Thanks. I think thanks a lot for having me here, and also to bring it back to that event last year. I think and talk a bit about our Critical Ask.
Yeah, let's do that.
So basically, our main customers are enterprises, enterprise sales, long sales cycles. I think even given that we exist for 6 years already, the sales was kind of still quite founder-led. Yeah. So we were looking for someone that could actually take over and grow into a commercial lead role or join as a commercial lead.
And that was for Closure or for Jochem? Because I remember when you pitched mostly for Jochem.
Yes, it's for Jochem. Yeah.
Or is it now both? Did it become like a combo role? Like
no, it's mainly it's for Jochem.ai.
Okay.
But the reason I'm doubting a bit is because we have some synergy. So it's always the case that current customers of Closure are also suitable for Jochem.ai. So there are some synergies, but it is this person is fully responsible for the Jochem.ai operations.
Yeah.
So that is quite tough because I think what defines our team is that most people have a technical background and are also commercially engaged or have some affinity with commerce. Mm-hmm. But this profile is kind of hard to find. And then also they should like startups and software. And I think we had it's always tough to find the right people, but especially for this more senior role within a young company.
And it's hard to find good salespeople in general.
Exactly.
Because they need to live and breathe the company as if it's their own. And at the same time, it's not, So.
Exactly. So if you're listening.
This is what you can do all the shout outs you want. This is what this podcast is for.
Thanks.
Yeah, but what's been, because you've participated, I think you got a few bids.
Yeah.
Those bids don't always automatically turn into like the breakthrough kind of connection. But what happened afterwards, and what makes it still so hard? Like, what have you done afterwards still to solve it? Because I'm assuming it's still not solved, right?
It is actually solved since last January, so very recently.
Whoa.
And indeed, quite some good connections came out of it, so that was super nice. The person we actually hired was not a direct connection. Mm-hmm. However, it really helped in also getting our ask more clear. So having those conversations guides you more like, are we looking for actually someone with a hands-on mentality that likes to do sales? Are we looking for someone that wants to do more like a managing role, or do we need a managing role? Should it be Jochem.ai only or Jochem.ai and Closure? So it really helped in also learning about what we're actually looking for. Mm-hmm. So that was super useful. And now, indeed, we just filled the position last month. So exciting.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thanks. Happy that we managed. And it took, so actually now if you reflect, it was at least not 2 years ago, it was 1 year ago. So it took us a year to actually come to this point. Yeah.
That's a really long time. What do you think is the reason? Is it that I think you explained already that it's quite a complex role. There's a lot of different kind of backgrounds you need to have. But is there also hesitation? Like, let's zoom in a little bit on the hesitation of working for a startup, right? Because this is access to talent, right? I think it's one of the 4 pillars that we are focusing on with Superconnectors, and it's a pretty tough one. So where do you think exactly the hesitation is for working in startups?
From the candidate point of view.
From the candidate's point of view, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think based on my own experience, it's also we have a rather young team, but that's also tough because people don't have a lot of experience yet. And maybe we talked about we don't know what we're looking for, but maybe they don't always know what they are looking for either. So it sounds super cool, a startup, a lot of responsibility, flexibility, exciting times, but there's also less structure, less guidance, less seniors to learn from. And I think some people are, but some are also learning about what it's actually like to work for a startup. I think that's a tough part. So if we have the conversations with talent, the first parts are really focused on this culture fit. Like, can we offer you what you're looking for actually? And will you fit the team? Instead of what is your actual skill set and does that match? So I think that's at least for us, an important component. And that's the first step why it wouldn't be a fit.
Yeah, and also I can totally understand. So for juniors, I think it's typically more exciting, right? Because they have less to lose, they like the excitement, the cool factor of a startup. Yeah. But indeed, the seniors, and that's why I think this one in particular is so hard, because they have these big fancy salaries from these big, huge corporates, so it's hard to let go of that.
True, it's in terms of compensation, probably a step back. That also doesn't help. And I think, it's... we have had, currently not part of the team anymore, but we have really reflect on that in a good way. We've had also, for example, a very senior person join our team, above 60, lots of experience, former enterprise, C-level guy. And you bring so much to the table because he has seen, what working in a large organization is like.
Yeah.
So, but for him, it was a very conscious choice. Like, well, I've done that already, and I really like being in this very exciting environment again.
Yeah.
But of course, there are not many people like that. So
No.
that's also the supply side of it is very limited.
Yeah. How did you find this person in the end? And also, how did you manage to lure them into the company?
Good question.
What was the kind of the thing
Attraction.
that made them jump ship?
Well, it turned out to be a true network after all. So it's actually the partner of a friend of mine. So that's
Warm introduction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you go about the process? So was it like, of course, there's like using the regular channels, like posting it on LinkedIn, putting it maybe on job boards. But was there anything in specific that you did to pursue that connection itself?
With this particular person, like how did we actually convince him to join the company?
No, in
like
general. So I always find that when something is a burning enough platform for a company or for a startup, you will find very creative ways to reach out. So, for example, one of the startups that participated to Superconnectors was looking for an introduction to a famous DJ.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they had put it in their signature, and they said, "Introduction to the famous DJ will be rewarded with like a massive dinner or something." So
like a bounty hunt.
Yeah, like a bounty hunt anyway. So was
Nice.
there something creative that you, or was it just good luck, karma?
Well, I think this time it was definitely also luck, but in general, I try to put in a lot of effort in finding the right people. So that is just, starts off with browsing through LinkedIn and find those people that, so for example, I look at people that joined like startup competitions or those kind of things. At least then you know that they're into the startup part.
Smart.
Or are in a board of, say, the Philips Innovation Award or something like that.
Yeah.
And then try also to send them, because like there's a reason why I love their profile. So they did something that is super interesting, and then send a message that, well, it takes a bit longer, but also describes what you really like about them, instead of more typical recruitment type of message. So I think another team member, was just thinking about the conversation we had, who joined the company, I think half a year ago, in a developer role. I liked his profile so much. Just actually found it by chance. He had this previous, current side hustle startup, which is called Graciëlla, and my CTO had the same startup before. It's his name. His company was Graciëlla instead of Graciëlla, and that was so hilarious. Like, wow, and there were so many things I really liked about the profile, and he wrote a book with GPT. It's like, oh, nice that you're trying out stuff. You're innovative, and he combined like technical with biomedical, and just like he fit the profile. It was so amazing. And I think I sent him a message, and then that evening, I think it was 11 p.m. we called for 1.5 hours, just random conversation, and then the whole application process started. But it's also, if you find like this really potential great talent, putting in a lot of effort, and we during the more formal application process, is not a formal thing, having calls late at night. We go for lunch and we ask them to join, for example, a lunch session at the office as well. Or we have this Monday breakfast session, join that and see how they interact with the rest of the team and ask for feedback. And that's, I think, maybe it's not very surprising, but at least it works for us this way.
So I like the way you approach it, because you take quite a creative approach. And I think one of the key things, and that's also one of the key things in a critical ask, is knowing exactly what you want, right? And if you know exactly what you want, then it's going to be much easier to scout for something, because then indeed you'll look for someone that participates in startup competitions, which is, by the way, a really smart kind of trigger point, right? Because then it's easier to find people. And then before you know it, you're hiring eventually. It
may take a while.
It may take a while, but it just took a year.
True.
Now let's.
Sorry. Can I ask?
Please.
Can I ask how it works for you? Because you have this great network. You also, does it help you internally when you, for example, look for someone to join the team? And how would you define like the Superconnector DNA?
We call it the pirates. So,
okay, sorry.
The team is a team of pirates here.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like the 5 people that are in the. You mean the team members of Superconnectors, like Dina, Evgeny, etc.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Evgeny, I found him through a pretty interesting way. Like every week, I post an article called, in my blog called "Life After Startup."
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep this short because the interview is about you. And Evgeny was one of the people that was reading all of them and was reacting. And at the end of the article, I always post like, "Hey, if you want to have a conversation to talk about your startup, then I always have an hour every Friday, to talk to people that want to start a company."
Yeah.
And Evgeny is one of those people. And he's also a really good photographer. He used to work at the Next Web. And so when we were talking, I immediately saw like tons of things and of course, he's our CTO.
Yeah.
So I saw so many opportunities, so I would say with Evgeny it was more serendipity, but having something where you reach out to people, so posting consistently about something and then people starting to recognize, this guy's into startups. I actually want to talk to that person. It also attracts the right people to you.
Yeah.
With Rebecca, it was literally through just an internship application, and I hired her on the spot.
Okay.
Because she was 21 when I interviewed her, and she had already organized like a festival with 1,000 people.
Oh yeah,
crazy. So that was like an immediate yes, and I also gave her a job afterwards. And Dina, that was also really fun. Like
a couple months ago.
You came in also, I think, through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So that was just good old LinkedIn.
Doing always
what it
works.
does. And well, we had a hard time finding good interns, and then we spoke, and we immediately. You had a really funny contrast with Rebecca.
Yeah.
Rebecca's very quiet.
Okay, yeah.
But we get along very well, though.
Dina's very mid. Always relaxed.
He thinks I'm always in a bad mood, but it's more like the composure, I think. Like, I'll walk in and I'll say hello, and he'll be like, "Are you okay?" Like, I'm fine.
Well, it's nice. I think we have like
good dynamic.
Very good dynamic. And then there's Gianluca from the Next Web, which came through Evgeny, and through our partners here. And we're completely different people. I think 5 completely different people. So, and I think that's also, you have a guy that is 60 that comes from the enterprise world,
Yeah, really adds to the team. And it's actually funny. I think it extends beyond the finding talent. So especially the story how you met Evgeny, I think that's reminds me of a post on LinkedIn from a VC who said founders that are looking to raise is not only about sending us a pitch deck. We see you. Like if you respond to our post, if you interact, we see that, we appreciate that. And that's how you that helps you, of course, down the road instead of just cold email with this is a pitch deck.
Yeah.
And talent's probably the same. You build this presence and relationship over time.
Yeah. But I also wanted to zoom out a little bit more on where the company is standing right now, right? Because now you've managed to hire the right person. What are the things that are still challenging for you? And because I would like to work also towards the end of this interview towards like what would then be a new critical ask or something that would really make a big difference for you guys. So let's start with where you're standing now, and then afterwards I kind of want to make my way to the bigger vision. So what's going on at the moment?
So I'll focus on Jochem.ai because I think the closure part is didn't change that much over the past couple of years. But
it's venture backed, by the way, right? Closure. Yeah.
Exactly. So with Jochem.ai, I think when we were one of the first companies to start combining like internal company data with LLMs, at least within the Netherlands. Yeah. Back then it was still hot and happening, but also kind of new. And now I think down the road, this will definitely be a commodity. Just the fact where you combine internal data with generative AI. Mm-hmm. So it's, for us, this change is kind of interesting because we come from a very boring business, like bereavement support, not sexy. Yeah. Generative AI, very sexy. So we move out of a blue ocean into a red ocean. So that is also, it's very useful for us. We are learning a lot.
Yeah.
And that means that we also need to find that specific angle that makes us stand out from the rest. Especially because things are evolving very rapidly. So for us now with Jochem.ai, that is the fact that you basically, like every model, garbage in is garbage out. So if you have poor company knowledge, which most companies have because it's outdated, it's incomplete, people don't like putting it in a knowledge base, that means you will not get good results. So we really focus on that part where we capture new knowledge, put it in a knowledge base. And that currently helps us stand out. So that's one of the important reasons why organizations choose us. So we currently have still focusing on the enterprise segment, also SME.
Can you give an example of like your biggest fan customer?
I'm not sure whether I am allowed to mention them, but they are typically, I can describe them. So basically it's the same customers as Closure has, so enterprises like telecom providers, utility companies and so on, but also more enterprise-size traditional businesses that have a lot of technical knowledge. So that can be construction companies or similar. Sorry, getting back to I actually lost where I was going.
Where the company is standing right now, right?
Yeah. So I think in terms of finding our position within the market, that's mainly it's a level of enterprise support we give. So it's not a plug and play because we don't think that delivers the best result. And also this capturing knowledge part. That also, so I think in terms of focus, and we're mainly focusing on Netherlands right now, I think that market is already big enough. Maybe bringing also, or shall we move on to the critical ask as well? Or like the challenge we have, is that too
I first
quickly?
really want to understand like what is the difficulty, because I can imagine a bunch of things are difficult. You know, you have two different businesses that you're running next to each other, which is, I think, already a challenge of its own. How do you not get massively distracted by the one versus the other?
Yeah.
And then I think on another level, indeed, like the red ocean, how do you at some point go beyond the customers of Closure? You know, because they are very codependent in a way. I mean, which is a good thing. However, you know, at some point you want to also like find new clients, like go way beyond that. Can you give me a bit of an idea of how that's going? Yeah,
that's super interesting. So I think when we launched Jochem.ai, it grew out of our own operation, but it's also would like to say otherwise, but it's less of a strategic choice. It's more something that kind of happens, and where we saw an opportunity, also opportunistic maybe. Yeah. We at the beginning was more unclear, like what would the relation between Jochem.ai and Closure be? They are both operating within like the customer support domain, some knowledge management. They could fit together. We do have similar customers, but actually most of our Jochem.ai customers do not have a relationship with Closure. So we were not sure how that would develop. So I completely get your question. Actually, the funny part is that most of them don't have a logical relation to Closure whatsoever. Yeah. But indeed, that's tough, and it's still something we are working out. Like, there are some synergies, of course, and it's nice to have a track record as a company of 6 years instead of 1.5. Mm-hmm. However, they both do follow a different trajectory, and they have different target customers, and it requires a different skill set from the team. So they are moving further away from each other down the line, and that also is so that was part of the strategic discussions we had today as well.
Yeah, I can just relate to that, because I had a similar situation myself. Right, I had an agency that made mostly videos, like animated videos, which was like all-star in that, right? Yeah. So we were very, very efficient doing that. And then on the side, I started organizing, so I started noticing like demand of internal videos from large corporate customers, right? So we started making like a video that would explain Closure, or a video that would explain like all these different new innovations in a way. So they were mostly externally facing videos.
Clear,
and then the large corporates started approaching us saying like, hey, can you explain digital transformation for us? And then I was also an opportunist there. I said, hey, nice opportunity. Let's develop entire campaigns for internal communication. Interesting new market.
Yeah.
But that slowly became a consultancy business. So completely different way of working.
Yeah.
And I had mostly a team of animators, designers, creatives. Yeah. And that was really hard to get that team to kind of help along or understand. And we tried awkwardly to make them work together. We did find it.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're running two separate businesses. And then you have, you know, what do you do with the synergy in marketing? You know, like, you're from marketing, like, you know, like you cannot put all your eggs in two baskets. You know, like, you go big or you go home.
Yeah, so, fully agree.
Yeah, so how are you gonna, how is that in the future? How will that help your mission? And maybe it's good to zoom out a bit to your overall mission, or do these two companies have two completely separate missions?
Good question. There are some synergies, but they will, my expectation is that they will both go their own way. Yeah. Also in terms of, I think marketing is a very good example. Like, how do you position yourselves? Do you want people to, we have been very much associated with canceling contracts after a passing. Yeah. I can give an example. So when we reached out to our current customers about Jochem.ai, like one of the responses was, okay, is it like internal knowledge assistant for handling bereavement? Yeah. And I was like, no, it's separate from that. So there are, there are some synergies again, but I think the way you described it is actually very nice. So just as you grow along the way, they will deviate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what would help you the most in enabling that in the best way possible?
Love that question. I think one of the first things that pops up in my mind is so I'm super interested also in your your story.
Another time. Yeah.
It's experiences from other founders that have been in that position. I think that's super useful. Like what
spin-offs.
Yeah, exactly. What did they look at? What was the right timing? How did they decide on that? Are they also, what is the motivation not to maybe split them up? Because you can, of course, have a portfolio of products, and if they go well together and the team can handle it, can also be a reason to keep them together. Yeah. So I think that's the most interesting part, and also have a very clear timeline for yourself with targets, like what do we expect, where do we want to be at what point, and then challenge yourself, like are we on that trajectory? So those are I think the two most important parts. Yeah.
Now, Dina, you're quite an outsider here at the table in terms of like you are maybe not a prospective customer, but I like the fact that you're an outsider.
Of Closure.
Sorry, of Closure or Jochem, like in that sense.
No, I said hopefully not a customer of Closure.
Oh yeah, hopefully not.
Jochem is fine with
it. Well, maybe for the moving.
Right? True.
I'm glad you added like the lighthearted examples now.
Yeah, also a nice live event. Yeah. Sorry.
But how do you see this? Let's say that you were to join her company, right? You're young. Right. You're graduating soon. Well, you graduated, but you're going to do a master's, and then afterwards, you know, she's a great employee, I can tell you, and then she's going to do a marketing master. So hey, you know, nice. Pretty interesting. But what would be the first kind of things that come to your mind, or what might be hesitations in a company that is in that situation with two completely different products?
That's an interesting question. As in, like, I'm getting employed.
From your perspective,
like a main, like the.
Yeah.
For both.
The umbrella.
Graciela gives you a call. She writes you a message. She found you at Superconnectors.
I call you in the evening, 11 p.m.
She knows you like startups.
I guess it is. I mean, when I first started working at Superconnectors, I was very unfamiliar with like this whole industry of like being in a startup and all that. Yeah. But now I know all the uncertainties. But I think it's very exciting. So I guess it goes under the umbrella of also working in a startup type of thing. Yeah. As in like, you want to contribute, but you also are unsure where it's going, but it's like part of the whole process, I guess. So these like the uncertainty of where these two companies are, is that the question? Like as a person like joining the company, like what my thoughts would be about that. I guess it's part of the the journey itself of being in a startup. It's like ups and downs, and where will we go next?
Yeah.
But it's exciting, I think. Like, I've grown to realize that it's exciting. It was complicated at first to figure out, because I think you mentioned in the beginning, there's no one like spoon feeding you the things.
No.
Yeah. So I guess it's like, I would say similar. Just like go with the flow. A good experience. I would if both of you interested, if both of them interested me, like I would still.
Which one would you choose?
Good question.
I think I'm very unfamiliar. I mean, maybe the AI, like the Jochem one, because I'm very unfamiliar with like all the AI itself and all that stuff. So it would be a good starting point. I don't know if you would hire me to begin with.
Well, the marketing part is challenging.
True. So I'm not sure. Tough question. Closure, maybe. It sounds. Yeah, Closure.
I really like you saying that, actually. It's also, I find it so interesting that when we started Closure, like one of the concerns was how are we actually going to find talent, because we're operating in, well, funeral, death tech. Like, horrible, how are you going to pitch that? Yeah. And we really love this industry because it's super traditional and there's a lot of room for like innovation and also, of course, the impact, and everybody gets what we're doing. And then Jochem.ai is like AI, what's happening, tech. And actually, I think it's more easy to get people enthusiastic about the bereavement closure part than the AI part, which is surprising.
I think it's closure is obviously different.
True.
It's obviously different. Like it's like a Seth Godin's purple cow, right?
Yeah.
If you only see black and white cows and suddenly one is purple, you're like, hey, what the hell was that? Right? So
nice
if the whole world is imagining funerals and death and like sad and people in black suits, and they suddenly see you, Graciela, like a very very like bruisend. Sparkling woman, like a happy yellow, like you're the opposite of what I associate with death, right? And then on top of that, you have like innovated and launched technology in that space, which is completely unexpected. Whereas Jochem.ai is in a sea of AI, cool, hip startup companies.
Yeah, get what you're saying.
It's one of the other black and white cows from. It's not a purple cow. So, and of course, the product is unique, and I'm sure there's going to be 1,000 ways that you can spin that. But so I do understand why your preference might be more for one than the other. Yeah,
it definitely caught my eye, the closure thing, because I've heard about it before. I mean, I knew about it before through my time at Superconnectors, but I was looking through your website recently, and then I saw like the things that you actually do and the companies you work with, and I was like, it could be interesting. Like, why would you not take the opportunity to come to take part in such an innovative idea? I mean, it's like he said, like it's a bit grim that it's about death, but it's like a necessity that you didn't think you needed. I've never thought of it, but it's also
the first thing I thought when I saw it. I was like, wow, that's such a good idea.
Yeah. In terms of marketing, also very interesting. Like, where can you take it? How do you position yourself in a way that's, I don't know, very cool. So I think for me, like 21-year-old, just discovering things, and that would interest me a bit more. But maybe if you tell me more about Jochem, I'll change my mind.
Afterwards I'll get you hyped for Jochem.
Okay, so I think we should also start like going towards an ending here. So you've told us a lot about finding talent, how that challenge was difficult for you. You've told us about your current challenges, which is how do you operate these two businesses next to each other, one being in a blue ocean, the other one being in a red ocean. But now I think we already had a hint of a potential new critical ask, which was, how do you navigate then this pivotal moment for you?
Exactly.
Do you want to kind of put that into more specific words?
Well, actually, I think the summary is perfect. It's just anyone that has been in this position or has thoughts on it, doesn't even need to be in this position, and is willing to share those thoughts, is going to be very helpful. Yeah,
and preferably, I'm assuming I'm helping you out a little bit here, preferably someone that comes from a similar type of industry would help. I mean, I'm assuming B2B SaaS or tech
exactly.
or enterprise. So
dev tech would even be better with it.
Dev tech.
No, kidding.
Let's see if we can find it.
Very niche focus.
We found a lot of people. Unfortunately, they're all dead.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so preferably someone that comes from the industry. Preference for the Netherlands or outside the Netherlands?
Not sure that really no, okay. Yeah, would be helpful, I think, because then you know the Dutch market as well. So
Exactly.
from the Netherlands, that enterprise software, B2B SaaS, that would be, that is, I think, the most relatable.
Okay. Well, hereby, we're asking the entire network of Superconnectors to get going on this. Any closing remarks that you would like to add?
Good one. I think from my side we covered most of it. Would
Maybe
love to
there's
continue
something decent you want to promote?
Good question.
You're looking for a new employee somewhere, job opening.
Exactly. What is a nice closing remark? Well, I think I'll definitely would like to continue the conversation on Jochem.ai and how you're going to be super excited about that part as well, and also your experience, Alex, with how those two companies continued their journey. I'm thinking if we have crazy updates. No, I think the for companies that are considering applying some generative AI solution, I think one thing to keep in mind is at the beginning everybody's super excited, and we have all seen and are probably actively using ChatGPT. Is giving amazing results, but as soon as most companies start applying it, you will encounter some difficulties further down the line. And I think the garbage in, garbage out part is very important. So if you are struggling with that part, well, we would love to have the conversation, but also it's just something that you can anticipate on.
Yeah.
So start collecting. I think this data is a new gold stuff, to quote that part. Start preparing for that. So start collecting information, store it somewhere in the knowledge base, such that you have actually the internal IP that you can use for those generative AI applications. That's maybe something to...
Good company plug at the end. Yeah, good. So thank you, Graciela, for being on the show, and I really look forward to seeing what's next to you. For you. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you, everyone.